So we're talking about how to build structures to run AI, right? And we have to address this by the people and by all the technology behind it. But we do have more than one kind of company. We have startups, we have incumbents, we have companies in many verticals. How do you address this in the first place? That's an open question for all of you. Can if you want to comment on that, and I'm expecting questions from the audience as well.
I can take on that. Actually, it's a good opportunity to mention one paper that we published a couple years ago, which called Fintech, with the question, is this time different? And we were kind of, the Bank of Canada was a little bit nervous that this fintech would disrupt a lot, and we looked into a little bit the AIs. Anyway, we went to Toronto and a few other places where there's a lot of fintechs and AI research. And our conclusion was that there's three flavors of fintechs. Is from the top, say, established company, a big bank, for example, that uses AI, fintech, or any of the technologies that are driving fintechs to improve their processes. Then you have, at the bottom, new companies that are trying to disrupt in some area by developing new technology with a new business model. And then in the middle, you have some fintechs that are trying to just sell services to those big guys, right? And in early stages, you might have some fintechs, in this particular case of AI, that are not concerned too much with the application, just with the core technologies. If they can get a big leap in some fundamental technology, they might either decide to be a white label service to a big company or find an application from which they can develop own business. So I guess for folks here, the question is, what's your strategy? Are you developing a core technology that might be a business in itself, for which you have to find a business model? Or are you going to just be something that you can sell to, for example, a big bank? And to be able to decide which one of those two you might want to be is to understand the barriers to entry in that particular vertical you're trying to think, right? If it's something that it can be commoditized, that someone else will actually do just with enough effort, maybe you're better off trying to sell to a company quicker than another and be acquired. That would be my take on those.
Was it different that time?
Probably. Yeah. You mean because of the title? No. We said, you know what? We've seen this in every wave of financial innovation. It won't be different this time. Yeah.
Nice. Guys.
So I will do the role of academia here. And in academia, and I will take our Brazilian environment for academia, in which we have a system that sometimes make it difficult to build a group that can really go forward, bringing concrete advances and contributions that could be aligned to what the research area is expecting from us, the academic environment is also expecting from us, and that the society is also expecting from us. So we have a system that usually drives us towards one of those only, and doesn't allow us to really bring the full contribution that is expected. So one good way to go here is trying to not really paying so much attention, which is hard, but not really paying so much attention in specific ways of getting fundings or specific ways of getting numbers for evaluations that will happen. Yeah, for sure, keep in mind that the system needs to be followed. So you need to be in the system, and it's important to have measurements. It's very important to show performance in terms of numbers of papers and things like that. But it's very important to not to drive your team or your career in the lab you are trying to put on and make it run only on these kind of things. If we could, on top of that, have a team with projects that, in addition to take into account the single PhD project or master's project, but can be actually added into a more mid to long-term idea or goal, this could drive to results that can impact, in addition to the number of papers and things like that, that we are all the time being asked for in academia. This can help you to go and actually contribute to concrete results that society can benefit from, industry can be partner of, and an ecosystem can evolve much better in this way. So that's how I see. This is really not the easy way to go and build a team or lab or things like that in academia, in this area or other areas too. In this area, we have this lots and lots of conferences, and we are asked to have so many papers published and things like that, that sometimes we cannot pay attention on what can be also very, very important, which is contributing and generating results, the feedback loop to society. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, nice. Marco, if you mind.
Yeah, so, okay, so I'm coming from National Research Institute, right, so state-owned, and I'm from Europe, right, from Slovenia. So, you know, if you want to do successful stuff, right, either you are big, like, I don't know, IBM, Amazon, right, we are not big, right, so then you can be faster, right, so you can be faster only if you're like in Silicon Valley. New York is already not as fast, right, so we are not the fastest, again, because we are just in Europe, right. So there could be the third thing. So you can be smartest, right? Okay, we chose this, the third thing, right? Now okay. Now the question is how to be smart, right? Or especially if you're running research group, how to make this research group smart and strong, right? So so our strategy was always to get into the group people which are on a day one very good software engineers, right? So they can do all the layers on programming. They have no issues with usual IT stuff, right? And then we teach them AI on the top of it, right? So in other words, right, full stack people, right? So where we extend the stack. We don't take somebody who would just manage AI, right, and somebody else would program for them. So, and out of this, somehow we build up the group over the years of like 50, 60 people, and hardly any left us. Okay, a couple of people left us. Okay, one. Luca actually never left us, right? But so this was generally strategy, right? So to and the second criteria. Okay, if you're running the group and you want to be smart, okay, you want to have a culture of knowledge interchange. Otherwise, you know, if people are competing within the group, you cannot win, right? Sooner or later, this breaks. Now, okay, these are just a couple of prerequisites, right? And now on the top of this, of course, ambition, right? Ambition to move things. As Esteban said, okay, since we are originally in academia, right? So we try to push the borders. And so for us was always, well, where can we move a little bit, right? Yesterday you saw some of these systems, right? What we do, what we did. For instance, we had this Psych Europe, so we discussed this Psych. So this was one of these attempts, okay, how to bring something which is fairly unique in the world of AI, not the most successful, but fairly unique. And so, okay, so we opened Psych Europe, right? So, and we learned a lot about it. And joining this with many other things. This was one of many attempts, right? Not all attempts really helped. And yeah, last dimension is also how to bring money. Otherwise, you cannot survive. So, and basically, if you're doing research, right? So, generally, you try to, well, bring money. You spend like 30–40% to execute the project. The rest you invest, right? Since if you have good software engineers, you can do for a fairly small percentage of the budget, project budget, actually what needs to be done. So this is like one quick strategy. And also, well, one thing which is always important, the network, right? So you can be smart, right? So, okay, this is nice, but if you isolate it, doesn't help, right? So you need to have money as a fuel, right? But then you need to be connected. So, and in terms of this connectedness, somehow we did, I think, a lot. So not listing all of them, but yeah, so we tried to. Europe has one curse, which maybe you don't see from here, right? So this is not problem of Slovenia, but
You have just one course?
one related to this.
We have many here.
One which is constantly discussed at, let's say, on the level of European Commission. So European Commission is pushing a lot of money into research. And actually there are results, right? Now, the problem is that they're pushing this money into, let's say, young people, young startups, but the goal of these young European startups all over, right? France, Germany, name it, right? Is not to be successful in Europe, but to be successful in US. So, and this is a kind of curse which Europe cannot break for some reason. And I mean, we understand why this is happening, but anyway. Yeah, so this is, okay, just the last bit. Okay, we'll discuss more, but these are a couple of recipes how to build up this good research group.
It's all Britain's fault. Right?
It's not?
Britain's fault. They discover the US, so the Americans.
Not sure. I think it's...
They set the trend there.
Being risk averse. I think this is... and once you fail in Europe, then you're labeled, right? So in US, this is not true, right?
Claudio.
Well, I was expecting you to say that you have to deal with 20 languages as your course, because I think that's a very difficult issue. But I'm going maybe to take the question a little different from then too, in the sense of how I see AI being digested by organizations. And I think for us the best analogy is to look again at the web, at the World Wide Web, and the internet, let's put it this way, the way it was incorporated into different kinds of organizations. And I think what we saw was that for some organizations where it is the core business, it creates a different kind of organization where that if you take a place like, I don't know, Amazon originally, like the whole company is built in that kind of distributed but vertical structure of a website, let's put it this way. And then you have companies which we use it, they're important, and then you see more like into channels. And that's, for instance, I think how most banks started it as like, oh, it's a channel of the consumer. And there are companies that are going to use it marginally, and okay, I'm going to use it in the HR, and it's going to be spread all over. Okay, and I think it really depends on the business how it's going to get struck. But I think what we need to do to be successful, and we saw that internally at IBM, is that we have to educate our managers and executives on it. Okay? I'm going to be a little bold here. I think there's more fake news in tech than in politics. Okay? Maybe not as malicious, not as intentionally malicious, but the amount of inaccurate reporting, of wrong reporting.
Also in science.
In science. In science also, because you never know exactly anything. So,
You're a diplomat. So.
Okay. So, and it was interesting because I was at MIT when the web's starting. And one of the things we did, we would bring, at the Media Lab where I was, would bring every year 200 executives of all kinds of companies. And one of the things we did is we taught them what the internet was. And suddenly they saw, they would experiment, they would do some playful way. One thing that was, I still remember is, the first time many of them saw in front of them the concept of public auction, of eBay. Well, it was not eBay at the time, it was no eBay. And they said, oh my God, this works. This actually works. And we had stations where they could put bets on things. And they didn't do anything else that day. They just played, putting bets against, in actions against each other, because somebody said, oh, I never imagined that could be done this way. Seems weird now, but it was new at that time. And I think educating the executives and being very diligent, and I think in IBM we did a lot of that, also with sales. You have to go and make them play with and put hands on and find ways to get those ideas, which are not easy, are much more complex than in the web. The web ideas are much simpler. Okay, these are much harder ideas. So you need to train executives, managers, otherwise they'll listen to all the fake news.
Yeah, but that's a great approach. I agree, even with the part of the fake news. So. you should address more financial services as well. So in Brazil, we have a huge problem with the fake news, and
yes,
it's terrible. I agree that we have to educate every level of people inside the companies. In each level on its own way,
yes,
of course. And I understand that educating people on tech stuff, we have to grow from the basics and then go higher and higher, maybe get to AI as well. But another topic that I wish to address here, and then I'll open for questions on the audience. It's which KPIs, metrics, you think that would be best for this kind of companies, small, medium, big companies? We can start here as well.
In terms of use of AI or in terms of...
use of AI, yeah.
Well, the bank is, as I mentioned, kind of at the end of my talk. The way we approach AI was from the bottom up, like from the point of view of people's curiosity. So the bank just opened the resources, the amount of, and provided kind of the basic infrastructure so people could actually go and tiptoe. So our indicator of success is if people are picking up, say, the usage of the cluster, right? And it is used 100% almost all the time. So that's one simple indication. But of course, at the end, you want the applications and the results. But we're a long-term institution, so we're relatively patient compared to a business, for example, or some academic institution that they publish or pair. So we have kind of a longer term. So I guess it depends on also the mandate. As I mentioned with the pivot program, we're going to be putting those challenges to the public, and we'll see how frequently people actually pick them up. So with a narrower scope, maybe you can be quicker. So sorry I didn't answer the question directly, but it's kind of a different approach from an institution like ours.
Thank you, thank you.
And actually, let me add that something, because we're streaming. I have to again say that my opinions are the ones of the Bank of Canada and not of the Governing Council. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I will take this again and how to measure with the success of the teams and things like that. And I will get back to what I was saying, and I would say that you can be very successful in academia building this group that publishes a lot, like Publish or Perish, and you can be very successful too if you do that in getting funding for specific projects, mainly if you follow the funding or follow the project based on the funding available. So if there is this new area to work, let's go for this, instead of keeping what you are trying to build. But all of this tends to be very sporadic or very episodic, and then you didn't really bring the culture in your team, and you didn't bring what Marco was saying, this culture of a team, and you build actually many people working in the same place, but they are trying to compete and get their own work done. And I think this would be seen as something that can be transferred for the environment of teams also in companies and things like that. So it's very important to focus not in the short term, I would say, in the long term or in the idea that your team has. It's very important, not only in academia, but I'm giving here the opinion in academia, to be doing some stuff that I see many people talking already about that. So to fail fast, but trying to do this fail fast in order to drive your big contributions. Yeah. So if you can really, even though you are in academia, you can take this approach and you say, okay, I'll try to develop some contribution, but I will not make it at the end of my work. Yeah. So I would like to see if my contribution would really make sense, having some steps where I can prove some smaller concepts and then build upon those and go on and go on. Because if you do that, like your team and even the project of each student and even the contributions that you are going to bring to society, they will have much more chance of success, and you're gonna avoid a lot of the risk of being working so long and bringing nothing back. So this is really, really true in academia, where sometimes if you just don't care about this failing fast, you just keep on your ideas that you think are really, really brilliant, and you can spend like 20 years of funding from our government and things like that. That's really not the best way to go.
And just fail slow, right?
Yeah, and then then you failed slow, and then you don't have time to try to succeed. So this is
Yeah, in terms of these KPIs, right? So one thing which was observed by other people and I thought somehow it's kind of interesting. So in the old style of organization, right? So there was this CEO which kind of understood the whole thing, and then down the hierarchy, this was more and more fragmented, and the people on the bottom of the hierarchy, right, understood just their small little garden. Right now, what AI is changing, right? That if you have a person like an AI or data scientist, which is maybe on the bottom of this hierarchy, right? This person actually understands company probably way better than the CEO, right? So this is what AI is, data science in general is changing, right? So let's say an analyst in a bank with all the data and all the tools, right? Today probably sees a lot, right? And CEO has maybe just the aggregate information. So now your question was about KPI, right? One possible KPI would be, can this know-how be transmitted, conducted through the vertical, right? Through the vertical, so from the guy person who actually has control, maybe he doesn't have a power really, but he can understand at least the business processes, data, and so on, to the levels where CEOs decide, right? So this would be one possible KPI, which I think could be relevant, right?
That's a hard question. Thank you.
It is. I like to hear all the answers.
One thing I learned, I think, in innovation, in my career, is that innovation happens because of greed and fear. Okay, either you want to make more money or you feel, attacked by a competitor. But I think when you're in fast-moving technologies like the one we are, the real factor, the real thing is fear. So let's call the KPI the fear factor. Okay? Your basic question would be, how far behind I'm from my competitors in blah, 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 in adoption, in use of the chatbot, in prediction, because that's where most of our companies will be. Okay? And often when you do that kind of try to objectively, and not using the fake news again, objectively to see how far you're behind, you find that you are behind. And let's say, and your KPI is how much I'm closing that gap. Okay, sometimes you're ahead, then you say how far they are from where I am, because it's a race. Okay, it's really fast-moving technology. But the point is, you have to be very careful in saying which are my important elements. I want to see adoption. I want to use effective decision, and how I'm good in evaluating my competitor where they are. And sometimes it's hard. Okay. That's, I think, where we should be in terms of measuring ourselves. This is really fast-moving.
Okay, Maisa just told me that we have 5 minutes, so we have time for one question here. If you don't have one question, I have a final one here. Okay, nobody has a question? Claudio mentioned that we are in fast times now, and speed is the day-to-day basis of reality now. And we're talking about structures on this new paradigm. I believe that we have to change to accommodate for these changes as well. But it is too fast. Maybe the ability to accommodate these changes is the new ability that we are looking for, not only teams with AI, but teams on IT as well, all over. How do you see that? Because, in my opinion, Darwinism for companies are the new black now. The ones who can go on are the ones who accommodate for the changes. How do you see that? And
maybe just one quick answer, right? So it's true that this seems like kind of the speed of change, that it's very fast. Actually, it is not that slow, really. But at the end, if we look on fundamentals, right? Fundamentals are not changing that much. Still, all these funny neural networks, right? So they were invented by Russians in 50s, right? I mean, it's only now that they because data and CPU power and so on, but the concepts are still there, right? So so why we are getting this perception of this enormous speed? Because there's no proper education, right? If education would be properly done, right, so then maybe we wouldn't perceive this as such a fast speed, because I mean, we live in AI for many years, right? So for us, it didn't change that much. Well, we need to change terminology a little bit, right? Need to update friends here and there, who became important in the meantime, and some others not, right? But that's it. That's the change, right? I mean, one possible view. So education was my point. So if things would be properly educated, then maybe the speed of change wouldn't be that fast, right?
yeah, I agree. Those coders that do develop for iOS or for any smartphone app maybe doesn't know how the OS works. So maybe we have to get back to the basics. You're right. Yeah.
From our point of view, as I just mentioned before, is during the talk, it's all about prices, right? So the price of something falls, but it falls relative to something else, right? So maybe the speed of the cat and mouse game is getting faster, but that doesn't make the whole outcome better. Like, you might be looking at developing code faster, but you still have to find an application for it. So you have thousands of startups, but thousands fail, right? So it doesn't mean that even though you have lots easy way to develop, because there's open source, a cheap way to use the cloud, you can develop quickly something that is successful. So, and from our own experience at the Bank of Canada, just doing this project and others, it takes a lot of time. So if you start from scratch, it takes a lot of time. So I wouldn't be as concerned as other people that this is world-changing and it's going to implode and there's going to be a singularity suddenly. No, I think just invest early in your hardware and your people early on.
Nice to hear that from a bank. So yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I would just agree, and I would say again that is very related to what I was saying when don't go for a new funding that just appeared because of this you change what you're doing or things like that. Stick to what you believe and you can contribute in mid and long terms, and be aware that most of this very, very fast stuff that is happening, it's much more of a new application or a new use of things that were already there some time ago. And so if you just try to get into the game, to catch up and so on, and now I change because someone did different, maybe that's when you don't get anywhere. So back to basics. So example, like we have self-driving cars at Carnegie Mellon since 1996. And yeah, I'm not saying they are exactly the same we have right now, but they were autonomous. They had much bigger equipments and so on. Now they are all hidden and so on. But you know, it's like it's not that fast, but many different applications appear, and that would really bring some different ways of seeing it. So society will see it differently, but we should, like we are building this, so we should be aware and keep believing that what we are doing is what is moving on, and that's it. Yeah. So I would say like that.
Excellent. Claudio.
I think we are in a world that is moving really fast in terms of technology. Although sometimes we have delusion it's moving faster than it actually is because of fake news. But again, I think you have to be a player, even of what's not working yet. That's sort of what I was trying to convince you in my talk. But you never know when the guy around you figures out how to use it. And you have to be ready when that happens. And I mean, if you look recently, a lot of people are talking about, mobile, and let's put our app there, and but people don't want. And suddenly, Uber sees, hey, you can do something you couldn't do before. And wow, no, yeah, that way. And I don't know, a lot of other companies sprung, and it changed it. It changed the way we do things. And it's going to change more. Okay, so the only way to keep up with this speed is to be part of the people who do it. Even if you cannot be the best, but you have to be part of people doing it. Otherwise, you be the next blockbuster. Okay, that's the lesson. Okay.
Great. I'll have to finish now. I'll thank you all for all the things you teach us today. I learned a lot. I don't know about you. Let's give a big hand of applause for him.